I'm Matthew Kerbis, the subscription attorney, and this is Law Subscribed, your dedicated source for all things subscriptions and the law. Thank you to my sponsors. See links to them in the show notes. Everything discussed is only for educational and entertainment purposes. Enjoy the show. Thrilled to have with me today John Heiderscheidt, subscription lawyer, also in Chicago. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to doing this. And, there's no better model than the subscription model for legal services these days, right?
Right, absolutely. For longtime listeners, and in particular those who are subscribed to the Substack at www.lawsubscribe.com and would like to watch the video, I'm in a new location today. I had a meeting at the merchandise mart this morning, a networking meeting. And so now I'm at 1871, and they were nice enough to put me into the DePaul University room, which is where I went for law school. So that's fun, but throwing back up the virtual background for folks. So my audio is going to be a little bit off and it's a little strange, but I really wanted to have this conversation with John because we're both leveraging subscription. We're both in Chicago. Something must be in the water here.
Right.
Right. Yeah. But just in case, folks, while you're listening, hopefully not while you're driving and listening, go to subscriptionlawyer.com to check out, what John's all about. But John, for people who haven't, heard of Subscription Lawyer yet, give us the rundown. Tell us about yourself and your firm.
Well, again, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you. A rundown on myself. I've been an attorney in Illinois for almost 13 years now. I practice kind of exclusively in the areas of criminal defense, immigration, and I do a little bit of civil law that's sort of business focused, but the predominant piece of my practice is criminal defense and immigration services. And like you, I had started to see the market metrics that were creeping into this industry that I think are in some ways a little bit different than lawyers have had to face professionally and economically before, and different circumstances than clients have been economically and have had to face before. And I have a video on my website that you can learn more about why I did this at subscriptionlawyer.com. But basically, the ABA came out with a study shortly after, while I was in law school, that said basically more than 85% of people in the United States can't afford a lawyer when they need one. And so the idea to me behind a subscription legal services, it's kind of like insurance in a way against legal fees, because we don't know, right? You don't know when you're going to need a particular lawyer. You don't know when you're going to get a traffic ticket. And I'm interested to hear what areas you participate in as well, but you don't know when you're going to need maybe a divorce lawyer. We saw an explosion of divorce during COVID. You don't know when you're going to need an estate planning lawyer or somebody to help you get guardianship of an elder. But I can tell you everybody's going to need a lawyer for something at some point. And so I'm sure you share sort of these sentiments and these ideas, but the idea is you go to a doctor for physical wellness. Why wouldn't you go to a lawyer for legal wellness and come in and do checkups? This is what's going on in my life. Because when an attorney hears that, they can say to you, oh, I see what's coming in the weeds. 12 or 18 or 24 months from now, you may need this. And for a little bit of money down up front to become part of a subscription network. I mean, I don't know how specifically you bill, and I don't want to speak to that, but when people are in my network, they're entitled to really steep discounts, and it makes all the economic sense in the world. So that's why I started that program. It's not that I won't work with people off a subscription model. I have plenty of non-subscription model clients, but that's why I started it. That's why I do what I do. I just think that, and as lawyers, we came into it. When were you admitted?
I was admitted in 2015. So I've been doing this for a little over 10 years, but the subscription model in particular, only since March of 2022. So when was it that you pivoted into subscription?
Well, I pivoted to subscription model a little bit later in my practice, but, I saw that kind of, we came into it kind of at a time when there were more lawyers in the market than ever before. And I was licensed in 2011, so we're just coming off the worst effects of the mortgage crisis. And so law firms let a lot of people go because they had hired people they didn't need to hire to keep up. And those people were the first to be caught. And then those folks went out and hung their own shingle. I mean, it had a tremendous downward pressure on the profession. And then people who would have retired, well, I just lost half of my retirement account. I'm not going anywhere. And
Mhm.
this is a profession that it takes a while to get licensed, but if you're fortunate and you take care of yourself and clients like you and you do a good job, you can be a lawyer into your 80s or 90s if you want to be. I don't know that I'll be a lawyer in my 80s or 90s, but if you wanted to, you could. And then
Well,
at
not when
this,
you're building a brand that's a subscription-based business. You don't have to be. You're a
right,
saleable asset, right?
right, exactly. Well, that's the hope. That's the thought for all of us entrepreneurial minded business owners is the sale day. But, clients have less money than ever before. And now, I mean, we're kind of past the mortgage crisis. I mean, those effects have happened and they're gone, but we're in the middle of an inflation crisis. It cost me $10 for eggs when it cost me $5 for eggs, or however that math works out. My wife's a little more exact with it than me. But, anywhere I go, it's $70 to fill up my gas tank. And I don't have the nicest car in the world. I have a nice car, but I'm not driving around some, Maybach. And I'm paying $70 at the tank. And, interest rates, you want to go buy a home right now? You got good credit, 7%. 7% on $300,000 is way more than 10% on 85 that was around, 40 years ago. So, I'm sure that your clients have experienced the same thing. And you want to, I mean, number one, why did you become a lawyer? Well, you want to have a nice lifestyle, of course, but you want to help people. And I knew I wasn't going to help people as a doctor. I don't like blood or surgery or anything, and this area of work kind of fits my personal skill sets. I'm an easy talker and I like to read and write, but at the end of the day, what I like the most is when I go home and somebody says, thank you. Thank you for changing the trajectory of my life. The court had entered a removal order against me and it was vacated because of what you did. And I would have to go home to a country that's really unstable and there are no opportunities now because of the work you and your team did. It's not just me. I have a great team. I'm really lucky there. I have a wonderful legal staff. I have a team of attorneys that are super helpful, and really know their stuff. And I couldn't do this without any of them. But, I got into this profession because I enjoy helping people and because it fit my skill set. And it's the way that we provide the service as attorneys is just going to radically change. And what we haven't talked about yet is AI and automation and how that's going to, you know, the legal profession is slow to adopt this stuff. It could wipe out 65% of the manual labor more, you know.
Billable hour manual labor.
And so we're going to have to find ways as a profession to deliver, what the client expects, but there's more competition to do it than ever. There are more outside resources than ever. And even for pro se's, I mean, how many pro se people do you know? And for anyone listening who doesn't know, pro se is someone who's on their own, they don't have a lawyer. But for a pro se client, how many of them walk in? Oh, I saw this on Google. It says it right here. I know what I'm talking about. And with the AI stuff, Chat GPT-4, and I mean, people are only going to think they can be their own lawyers too more often. So
Right.
yeah, it's very interesting, but that's a big part of the reason I offer the subscription model is, but at the same time, you have to pay staff, you have to pay rent, you have to pay the fees and go in and do your own time and walk into the court when it's necessary. And that, as much as society would like it, that can't be done for free and be done competently, routinely. Maybe you win the lottery, maybe you don't, but
Well, to give you some background, John, and a little bit more inside baseball for the listeners, John and I haven't had a chance to have a pre-show conversation because of a lot of extraneous factors. But when I started developing the subscription model that I use at Subscription Attorney, I was in litigation, but I was always kind of designing it for transactional. And when I left that litigation firm, I pivoted 100% to transactional. And while I said like there's something in the water because subscriptionattorney.com, your subscriptionlawyer.com, like I wonder, we probably bought the domains around the same time. I don't know. I think I got it in like
I bet you
2018.
anything. I think you beat me to it because I looked for subscription attorney and it wasn't around. It wasn't available. GoDaddy offered for $70 to reach out to you and see what they could negotiate. But
Well,
and part of it,
who cares? Yeah.
The last name Heiderscheidt, people, that's a tough one to spell. Subscription and lawyer is a little bit easier. So it's as much for
Right.
folks looking for me to make it easier to find on Google.
Right. I mean, I think I had the domain for like 3 or 4 years before I even did anything with her. But I went right in, I pivoted right into transactional law, and I don't do anything litigation, even though I kind of designed a model sort of around a subscription plus flat fee model for litigation. That's still out there if like folks want to use it. And I've talked about it on the podcast. But I look, this is like interview like 105 or something for the podcast. I don't know when exactly it's going to be published in what order, but in like 50 to 60 lawyers using subscription that have been on the show, like only 3 of you use it use it somehow tied to litigation. So it's still like not in that space a lot. And I frankly, when I was starting from scratch, I said, like, this is just going to be easier to do transactional litigation avoidance, like actually doing litigation. And I'm a true solo, so it's just me.
And some of it, all of this comes, we all want blanket rules, right? Because that's easy. The stoplight is red and that means stop, and the go light is green and that means go, and it works sometimes. But clients are like snowflakes, no two are alike, and there's a lot of independent and fixed analysis on the person and their situation and their circumstances and their background. And, I would love it if it was as simple as, oh, I'll file a complaint and your world will be, I'll take out my magic wand and we'll wave it and the world will be fixed. But, I tell people all the time, law is an imperfect tool. And sometimes when you're litigating, you've already lost. And that better than anybody if you spend time litigating before you pivoted to transactional. Yes, you and me can have the fight about whether this item is discoverable. And yes, we can submit these issues to the jurors and roll the dice and see what happens. And in some situations, maybe that's appropriate. Maybe the stakes are high enough. But no Illinois lawyer can go into an interview without quoting Lincoln. And one of my favorite Lincoln quotes about the practice of law is negotiate towards settlement as much as you can, basically. There'll be enough room for everybody, but negotiate to a settlement. And outcomes are unpredictable. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't have a magic wand. And it's me, it's the other party's attorney, and it's the judge. And I have no control over the judge except to try to persuade them through argument and to apply it to the fact and circumstance of your case. And sometimes that can be done in 5 hours, but many times it can't.
Yeah, and something else that you said that's a thread I want to pull on. It's also on your website, and this is another thing where we have diverged in our approach to business and subscription law firms, and that is, you say you do not need a subscription to work with us. I've taken the opposite approach. Right, I'm the Costco model. Like, in order to get access to my below market flashy services, you must first subscribe, even as low as $20 a month, right? And so I've taken that approach of, I'm just going to, and this is maybe because I was starting from scratch and I have the flexibility to do this. I did not have a pre-existing law firm. I was like, you know what? Every single client I sign up must be subscribed. Yep. And so that's the approach that I've taken. And I've really liked that approach, I'll tell you. But, what has been your experience then? And why did you ultimately decide, you know what? I'm not going to make every client subscribe?
Honestly, the client sometimes gets a little more confused about it. And I think to some degree, I'm just going to share an anecdotal story that has nothing to do with law, but I remember from a college lecture. And do you remember when Tylenol had its problem with the pills? People would reach in, and there was a time when Tylenol, I don't know if it was the 70s or 80s, but a couple of people went into drugstores and they bought Tylenol and they died. Like somebody.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And then, the way they recovered was they brought their CEO out, and like the way they avoided going into bankruptcy because nobody wanted to buy it was they brought their CEO out to be really transparent about everything that happened. And then as part of that lecture, they also talked about there was a medicine that they were selling for kids at the same time. And they had brought 3 different CEOs in, and every different CEO lowered the price. And they brought a 4th CEO in because that never worked. And the 4th CEO made it the most expensive medicine in the market on day 1. And on day 2, their sales spiked and they started to really take off. And the lesson from that was there are some consumers that believe I'm getting what I pay for, and if I pay more, I'm going to get a better product. And I think sometimes I have folks that come in that aren't, yes, it's nice that I could save on fees, but it makes them a little wary that like I'm not going to get the same service or the right service, or you're not going to
Mhm.
put as much into it than if I hire you on a regular basis. And then my big thing is I kind of do this like you. If you want to be part of the subscription network, you can't sign up day of. You can't wait until you've created your $50,000 problem to come in and say, "Oh, I need a lawyer today." In the same way, you can't wait to break your leg and then take out health insurance and
Right.
then go in and have, you either have to be part of the network or not. And I think another reason that this hasn't caught on more yet is I don't think people think about the service we offer in that way. Maybe I don't think people seek that out as much, even if it's advertised.
So this, I'm really glad you brought that up. But one of the things I wanted to talk with you about, because something I've run into with my brand being very broad too and generic, right? Like subscription attorney, subscription lawyer, just descriptive terms. I've had people think, oh, like he helps subscription businesses. Like he like that's what he does. He's an attorney or a lawyer for subscription businesses or businesses
Yep.
who want to do subscription. And don't get me wrong, I will do that. But
Right.
that's not like my niche, right? Like it is, you subscribe for legal advice and for legal services, like very broadly. And so I'm curious to know how you've handled that from like a branding marketing perspective, and also how, and this ties into what you were just saying with, we are the problem avoidance lawyers, because when you're subscribed and you're getting legal advice before you have the $50,000 problem, we help you avoid problems. And selling problem avoidance is more difficult than selling problem solving. So
Right.
sort of combine, I know it's a little bit of a compound question, but it's all kind of related. So I was hoping you could share your perspective and lessons learned on that.
Well, I just think there are certain client bases that are more open to it than not,
Mhm.
and what I mean by that is it's a lot easier for me to walk into maybe a business of 10 to 25 employees and say to that owner, you can really mitigate a lot of legal risks that you have by signing up with this kind of program for your business, and get them to understand the value add to that product and that service. But, pivoting back to something we were talking about earlier, your fees are very, very reasonable. And I think it's wonderful that you've been able to set up a business that allows you to structure it at the cost point that you have. I have not been able to structure it at any different cost point than I do, and I require $500 up front, but that covers you for the year. You don't make any other payments. But 500
Well,
bucks is a lot of money right now.
it's an
500
annual
bucks,
subscription then.
yeah, and
Okay.
$500 is a lot of money to,
Yeah.
I mean, for some people that's 50% of their paycheck. For some people it's 25% of what they're going to get all month. And
Mhm.
I mean, if I'm a business owner and I see value, that's one thing. If I'm somebody who just is living my life, then maybe I don't plan on it, but maybe I'm going to pick up a DUI because of my behavior styles one day. Like that person isn't really probably as motivated. They're just going to deal with the day of, you know. But what I'll tell you is I found the clients that come in day of, and then we do their service and they go through the costs. And could I be a subscription client now, please? You, because you learn the lesson. And then not only that, what I do is, and I don't know how you do this, but when you sign up, you get a rights card that you can put in your wallet. So, it just spells everything out. And you get a number you can call if you need anything that's not, the 800 number, it's a direct line. And you get discounts to select legal services, like really steep discounts, but you get wellness checks. You can call up and say, this is what's going on in my life. My neighbor and I are fighting about this. My grandma went to the grocery store and she slipped and fell and broke her hip, and you don't realize how much I think that people don't realize. I mean, maybe your experience is different, but I think that like trust and reputation is everything. How you deal with with people in the industry. That's a really big, important piece. And it's,
Yeah, and you just, if the listeners haven't checked out subscriptionlawyer.com yet, you explain the subscribe, like the network, you call it a network, but subscriber, member, network benefits, your 3 check marks on your page, right? Periodic access to lawyer for routine legal services, the rights card, and then the discounts, right? So those are your subscriber benefits right there. And one of my benefits is also scheduled 15-minute calls. So I don't give them like a direct line, but they get a link in their client portal that they can schedule time using Calendly with me that only clients get access to.
Yes.
And if you're at a certain subscription level, you get more access.
Yeah.
And more schedule time in terms of more than 15 minutes, but also instead of just 2 to 3 hours at the end of my day, you get schedule whenever I'm available. And the value of issue spotting for your clients, like who would have thought, like when I was in law school, I did not think one of the most valuable things I could give to clients is just learning how to legally issue spot for them. But that ends up being extremely valuable.
It's everything. Issue spotting is everything. Knowing what the client needs and how to protect the client, or in the worst case, how to undo something that's already been done to the disadvantage of the client. But I think that, legal services, getting back to this idea of trust is a really important basis of the attorney-client relationship. If the client doesn't like you, if they don't trust you, if they don't think that you know what you're doing, it's not going to work. I mean, period. It's just not going to work. And you really don't want to be looking for that relationship the minute you need it, because you may meet a lawyer that you like or you trust, but you may not need anything today or tomorrow, but 2 years from now you do. You'd much rather know who to call in that minute than just try to flip through Google and hope for the best. And it's such a low cost way to try to develop a relationship with a lawyer, the same way I go to the doctor once a year, once every 2 years, get my blood work done and checked up, and they tell me that the number on the scale is a little too high. But I go do that, so that I'm not blindsided 14 years from now by some terrible tumor that they could have caught if they did blood work. And it's I have an issue at my house. They won't let me put up a fence. They said something about an easement and I didn't. Well, that's going to turn into a big deal when you sell that place 10 years from now. And maybe you're not going to come up with the money you need to be whole or make money out of the sale. But issue spotting, you would spot that in that phone call 10 years earlier. The client isn't going to spot that issue until the real estate agent comes in or the title company comes in and says, you're not selling what you think you have.
This is one of the great benefits and values of having a subscription-based legal practice, because for most law firms to issue spot for their potential clients, it is a marketing spend. But what we are doing is we are making money marketing because the clients are coming to us so we could issue spot for them. So one of the things that I've always quoted as saying is, would you rather spend money marketing or make money marketing? So what you all just described in a really good way was like, it's like legal marketing, but you're making that $500 annually for your clients to get access to you to issue spot for them. Yeah.
Well, and I'm fortunate to have a nice network of colleagues, and I know other lawyers, and we have different practice areas, but we deal with the same things. How much stress is involved in your life because somebody didn't do it right versus how much stress would be alleviated for the attorneys if things are done right up front? And I not every situation is going to work that way. I mean, when you get into disputes where people have given tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions to a project or a contract or a business or whatever, that's not, you don't want a subscription lawyer working on that necessarily either. And you have the finances and the resources, but what it's a great product for, and what I'm so proud of, what I'm happy to hear that you're doing and so many other people are catching on to, is it gives a low cost way for people to take advantage of laws that help them. And a lot of it is just like, if you were not a lawyer, and I just mean if you were Matthew Curvis, the plumber or the electrician or the painter, how much more valuable would you be if you were tapped into, some semblance of business laws and protections and bankruptcy and LLCs and incorporation and all? you can protect yourself so much better. You add so much more value to your business so that when you hit that golden sale day, when Heiderscheidt Plumbing Co. is up for sale and a contractor wants to buy it because it's got good revenue and everything, I actually can complete that sale because I did all the silly little legal things that if I did them then would have taken $100 worth of an attorney's time, but now it's going to be tens of thousands of dollars because I didn't do it and it's 14 years later.
So I'm gonna make, so speaking of some of that stuff, I do want to pivot though, because we only got 14 minutes left and I unfortunately have a hard stop today, but
That's fine.
let's
That's
talk
great.
about, I want to talk about two more things, and that's the sort of the, and we'll sort of lighten around it, like nuts and bolts of like actually the model and then the technology that you're leveraging to deliver it. So like, for example, you say heavily discounted fees for your network members. So are you doing fixed? Are you doing hourly? Some combination thereof? And then what's like the technology that you're using to help be more efficient with your time and all that?
It depends on the type of case. So I will do some hourly at discounted hourly rates. If they're immigration or criminal, I usually still am in the flat fee area, but there's like percentage discounts. It can be up to 30 or 40% from the service, depending on what you need. I do say in the retainer when you're a client of the subscription model that, I give myself a little wiggle room because, you know, there's the average case that anybody can get through. And then there's the case that from start to finish is an exercise in, legal gymnastics and theorem and everything else. So I give myself a little wiggle room on complexity, but I tell every client, I don't want to retire on one client. I don't. I want you to go out and live your life and say, this guy was great and he was affordable and you should talk to him, because that's what leads to a nice, long, successful business for any business. People go to McDonald's because they know they can get fast, cheap cheeseburgers. So you want that for yourself. But it's all built into my retainer agreement, and it's all, spelled out with the client on the day that they signed up.
And then as far as like processing and analysis and drafting, in particular for the criminal law and the immigration, then that's on flat fees. Are you leveraging like automation tech, Gen AI, like anything like that?
I don't know if you've heard of platforms like Clio or DocketWise. I think there's some others. I use technology like that. I'm actually working on a very cool proprietary technology, and I'm hoping to launch it by the end of the year. And it will take humans completely out of the process, though it will be supervised by a human attorney. And if you want that option, you can have it. It'll be added and baked into that. And so I'll tell you what, when I launch that product, you are going to be my first interview. I'll do it with you so that you can see.
Okay.
But
Sure.
it's very much geared towards immigration clients. And that's, immigration is a kind of law that lends itself to automation and tech. There's only a handful of motions and pleadings that can be filed. They're really well spelled out. The principles of law have been there for a while. Although, did you see they eliminated Chevron deference basically?
Yes.
So that's going to have a huge impact in immigration law. I mean, I can't begin to describe to you what that's going to do for immigration law if you can get your case into the district court or the federal circuit.
Whenever there's something like that happens and people are like, society's going to end, or like people are worried about it, they ask lawyers like, well, what's going to happen? And I'm just like, lawyers are going to make a lot of money. That's what's going to happen.
There'll be more room to challenge. I was a lot more disappointed with the Dobbs decision than I was with ending Chevron deference. It's my opinion, and anybody can disagree with me and we'll still be best of friends. But it's my opinion that the administrative arm and the bureaucratic arm of this government has been allowed to go too far without appropriate congressional oversight of some of the decisions and actions they take that affect so many people. I really wished that they would have left Dobbs alone. I wish they would have left Roe alone on stare decisis grounds. But in reading the Chevron opinion, and I know that's not the title of it, but in reading the case that addressed Chevron, I now understand that if they couldn't have decided Dobbs the way they did and relied on stare decisis, and gotten rid of Chevron deference, I don't think. So it is what it is, but I see a Supreme Court that's perfectly happy to return all of this stuff to the states. And I see a Supreme Court that's attitude is like it's between you and your county and your city and your state. And if they're not violating that bare minimum floor that's set up by the Constitution and applicable to the states vis-a-vis the 14th Amendment, they don't care and don't even bother. That's what I get out of this makeup. I'm happy with it. I know this is probably not the topic of your podcast, but I am happy with the makeup of the Supreme Court from a criminal defense perspective. I think this has been a really good court for criminal defense.
Like every lawyer's answer, it depends, right? Like it depends on your perspective and in what context, and from you could say from a criminal, like you disagree with the Dobbs decision, but from a criminal law context, it's really good for you and your business. Like people, nuance is hard for people in general. I find it's a little bit easier for lawyers to appreciate the nuance because of the it depends perspective that's drilled into us in law school.
Yes, definitely.
So proprietary tech is cool, but what are you using to process payments? Like, are you just using QuickBooks? Or are you using like Clio or like
LawPay? I use LawPay. Okay. I like LawPay. I do Zelle with clients. Mm-hmm. I really like Zelle from an attorney's perspective. It eliminates the credit card fees. So there's nothing to be unhappy with. I do offer.
You're doing once a year. You're doing once a year for the subscription. So like that's easier to manage. I'm doing month to month. If I could automate Zelle, subscriptions like reliably,
that would still be great. Old-fashioned in that way. I mean, there's CRM software that you can use that will do all of this. I have an accountant who deals with the higher level tax stuff, and then I have a day-to-day bookkeeper that kind of keeps on the client. So that's a little bit old-fashioned. And the reason I do that is the CRM software is good and it can accomplish every purpose. But I think that the danger in going too heavy in tech is that although you don't hear this word used often for lawyers, there's a humanity to this. And there's an maybe you don't need a legal staff. Maybe LawBot can fill out the forms and everything. But at the end of the day, you're coming to the lawyer because you don't know the law and you want to feel comfortable that you're going to get the result that you want. Or you want to feel comfortable that, look, there's nothing I can do, no matter if I spend $1 million or not. So I think that tech can't replace the humanity part of that, but we as lawyers can use technology and automation to deliver a cheaper, better product and probably make our lives just as profitable, but maybe a little bit less stressful. I know that you have to wrap this up soon, and I don't want to keep you, but I would stay here and talk for an hour if you wanted to.
I know. And you and I will do something off call, and then maybe we'll have you back on the pod in a few months. But last substantive question for you, and that I hope you can still answer in just 2 minutes. And that is, what do you think is different about you? Like, why did you decide you're going to offer this subscription offering with heavily discounted pricing? And you kind of got into it a little bit with the reports and learning about the industry and access to justice and all that. But more internally, for example, right? Most of my guests have been women and attorneys of color that tried to do the big law billable hour thing. It didn't work for them. So they went off to start their own thing and they innovated. I've had just the entrepreneur brain is like a neurodivergent brain. I've had folks with ADHD or other kind of neurodivergence, that maybe that's why they're thinking of things differently. I'm a first generation attorney. So I've been a lot of the guests on my podcast. So what do you think it is? Any of those things or something unique about you that allowed you to do something different with your law firm?
I share the first generation attorney in my family, and although it's not a conscious connection, I'm sure subconsciously that's part of it. I'd love to say that I'm the smartest person in the room, but there are tons of intelligent people in this profession. So I can't say that I'm the smartest human being. I think, I always tried to put the client in a better position than when they came in. And I've not received compliments for this. I've actually had some people tell me that maybe I could work on this, but I'm very direct and very honest and very blunt. I don't believe in sugarcoating, especially on the immigration side. If I tell you something that you want to hear, but that's not exactly right, you could wind up being yanked out of this country over it. And so you may not like to hear from me that you shouldn't apply for a green card because you have 5 DUIs and 2 DV convictions, but you're going to like me even less if I file the paperwork and they pull you out of the country 2 years from now or 4 years from now. And, I've had a common theme in my life, whether it's been professional or personal, has been, boy, you can be awfully direct. And I'll say that maybe when you ask what's different about me, I probably would say that I'm very honest. I'm always honest, but I will tell it to you exactly like it is. But I think that's part of this service. It doesn't help the client for me to tap dance around something that doesn't work. And you may as well just hear the bad news with the good.
I mean, you could have just been describing me in that. And my wife would certainly agree, because my wife is like, more than anybody else, my wife is like, I love you. And I love that you're honest all the time, but it's brutal sometimes. I'm like, well,
Yeah,
exactly. At least, you're always getting the truth from me. So
exactly. And that's what we owe people. It's part of our fiduciary obligations. And I tell people, this is the last thought I'll finish with. I think there are harder jobs, but people will come and tell us things that they won't tell their spouse, that they won't tell their priest, that they won't tell their family members, that they won't tell their coworkers. There's a level of trust and honesty I think we get from people more than maybe any other profession in the world, maybe. And, when somebody trusts you that way, I think it's imperative, especially for the profession we've found ourselves in, to put them in as good of a position that can be. And that's what I try to do. So, and I'm sure you do the same. I can tell that just from this conversation.
Try anyway, right? Always try. So the last question I have for you is a fun one, John, and that is a hot dog a sandwich, and why?
I'm going to give you my answer regardless of the percentages. Do you ask everybody this question?
Every single person, and I could go over a few minutes. It's okay if I'm
what is
late
the
to
split?
this.
Is it like 50-50 or is it one way or the other?
So in over 100 interviews, I'd say, because I have a good sample size, it comes out 50-50. But with lawyers, I don't only interview lawyers, but with lawyers, you get a lot of unique answers too. And so it's hard to give an exact percentage, on this. But
I would say no. I say no.
Okay.
I say the hot dog is its own unique meal. And just the fact that it has some foldable bread. What sandwich do you put relish on? What sandwich do you put a spear pickle on or sport pepper on? And then there are some sandwiches people will put ketchup on. And in Chicago, that's like, I put ketchup on my hot dog. Don't release this part of the interview ever, but I do ketchup on the hot dog. But that's sacrilege here. What are you doing? People slap it out of your hands. So, I love a good hot dog, and I could name probably 20 different great hot dog places in the city. I'm going to say not a sandwich.
Okay. Are you for real? Do you want me to edit that out? Because I will.
No. I'm just having fun.
Okay.
People turn on me because I do ketchup on a hot dog. It's fine.
Yeah, I just eat a plain hot dog. So people look at me strange.
So I do ketchup. There's a place called Blaze and Grill over by me, and I do ketchup, mustard, grilled onions, relish, usually. And I like the pickle, but I take the pickle off hot dog. I eat that last.
I do eat a pickle, just not on the hot dog, and I will like grilled onions on a hot dog. So not totally plain. But with that, I want to let all the people know, John, where they can find you. Where's if you prefer socials or website, all that.
We have a ton of social. The easiest way to look at us is go to www.subscriptionlawyer.com. All how it sounds, no hyphens, nothing like that. We have a LinkedIn, we have a Twitter, we have a Facebook, we have an Instagram. Our director of marketing, Nora, is great about that stuff, and she's been so helpful and makes a ton of great networking connections for us. So we make it very easy for you to find us. Right now, we're at Harlem and Touhy. I would say by next year, we're going to be in a different building, but right now we're over at 7257 West Touhy Avenue, Suite 201A, Chicago, Illinois. And you can always reach out at 312-331-0087. There is a receptionist on that line, but if you leave a name and number and let that person know what your issue is, somebody can get back to you.
All right. Well, let's sign off. And thanks so much for coming on.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in. Make someone's day by sharing this episode with them. The best way to get in touch is to follow and message me on LinkedIn. To get extra content, subscribe to the newsletter at www.lawsubscribe.com, where you can also become a paid subscriber to get episodes and content early. Until next time, this is Matthew Kurbis with Law Subscribed.